Imagine, just for a moment, that you're a woman who has tasted the quiet magic of connection, the kind where words flow effortlessly, where eyes meet and understand, where dreams begin to intertwine without effort. You've been there, in the warmth of something that felt like it could last. He was present, attentive, perhaps even adoring. And then, something changed. Not with a storm, but with a silence. He didn't leave. Not physically, but you felt the retreat, the emotional vanishing, like a shadow pulling back from the light, and you were left with the ache of a question that lingers deeper than heartbreak. What truly makes a man fall in love? Not the kind of love that flickers or conforms, but the kind that roots itself in his soul. Many believe it's about doing, showing up, giving more, proving worth through affection and effort. And yes, that has its place. But what if love, real, soul-bending love, doesn't begin with effort? What if it begins in silence, in energy, in the unspoken realm where the soul recognizes something it didn't know it was seeking? Carl Jung, the great explorer of the psyche, would say, it doesn't start with what's visible, it starts in the unconscious. A man doesn't fall in love with your body, though he may admire it. He doesn't fall in love with your mind, though he may respect it. And he doesn't fall in love with your kindness, your loyalty, or even your beauty, though he may treasure all of these. No, a man falls in love, truly, irrevocably, when he feels something sacred in your presence, something rare, something that reaches beneath his armor and touches a place in him that he doesn't show to the world. That ancient, hidden part of him that even he doesn't fully understand. It's not what you say, not even how you say it. It's the space you create, the quiet invitation to authenticity, the energy that doesn't try to control, fix, or prove, but simply is. Jung would call this the Anima, the soul image of the feminine that lives deep within a man's unconscious. When a woman moves from that place within herself, not performance, not pleasing, but essence, she awakens this image, not through seduction, but through truth, not by being what he wants, but by being who she is, fully, softly, powerfully, and it is in that moment that something eternal stirs within him. When a man feels emotionally drawn to a woman, it's not because she's the loudest voice in the room. It's because her presence quiets something within him. In her presence, the chaos inside him softens. The battles he's been fighting, with the world, with his past, with himself, seem to pause. Not because she solves them, but because she doesn't demand that he be anything other than what he is in that moment. It's rare to feel seen and not judged, to feel vulnerable and not shamed, to feel like you can finally breathe, not because the air has changed, but because she has become the sanctuary. She doesn't try to rescue him from his shadows, she simply holds space beside them, as if to say, I see you, all of you, and I don't flinch. This is not the love that shouts. This is the love that remembers, the love that echoes something timeless within him, a sense that he's come home, not to a place, but to a presence, to someone who recognizes his soul beneath the noise, and answers with silence, not because there's nothing to say, but because the silence between them says everything. In that quiet sanctuary, something shifts inside him. The walls he's built so carefully start to soften, not because she tears them down with force, but because her steady presence invites trust, and trust is the gentle unraveling of armor. It's a subtle dance, the way his guarded heart feels safe enough to inch closer, to let down its defenses, to reveal cracks where light can seep in. He notices the small things, the way her eyes hold a softness, the way her laughter doesn't demand perfection, the way she listens with patience without the need to fix or explain. This emotional magnetism isn't loud or flashy, it's the quiet assurance that he won't be met with rejection, that he can be both strong and vulnerable, and still be enough. In her calm presence, his restless spirit finds rest. His scattered thoughts begin to align like stars in a clear night sky. He feels seen, deeply and truly, not just for who he shows the world, but for the hidden parts he often hides even from himself. And in this unfolding truth, a seed is planted, a longing for a connection that transcends surface attraction, that nourishes the soul's deepest need to be known and accepted. But this kind of connection isn't something he expects or demands. It's something he senses, quietly and almost instinctively. It grows in the spaces between words, in the silences that don't feel empty but full of meaning. He begins to recognize the difference between desire born from neediness. This kind of magnetism weaves itself through subtle gestures. The way his gaze lingers a moment longer, the quiet attentiveness in his voice, the small but intentional ways he moves closer without pressure. It's the soft invitation to a shared space where vulnerability is not a weakness, but a bridge. A place where two souls can meet, not to fix or control, but simply to witness and be witnessed. He becomes more aware of the power in stillness, how being fully present, without distraction or agenda, can draw her in deeper than any words could. There is a sacred tension here, a dance between longing and respect, between revealing and holding back, between knowing and not knowing. In this dance, he learns patience. He learns that true attraction grows in time, in moments filled with authenticity and grace. It's a magnetism that honors both the mystery and the clarity, that holds space for the unfolding without rushing the story to a premature ending. When a married man shows this quiet emotional attraction, it often feels like a secret language only the heart understands. An unspoken code of glances, subtle touches, and lingering smiles that speak louder than any confession. But beneath these signs lies a deep, often unacknowledged longing, a yearning not just for another person, but for parts of himself he's been missing or suppressing. The attraction is not just outward, it is an echo of his own inner desires to feel seen, valued, and truly alive. This attraction pulls him toward reflection, toward a confrontation with the shadows within, those hidden feelings of dissatisfaction, of disconnection, of dreams deferred. It is here, in this silent emotional dialogue, that the real work begins. Not in the chase or the secret meetings, but in facing the parts of himself that crave authenticity, that long for deeper connection beyond the surface of daily life. And when he dares to acknowledge this, he steps onto the path of transformation, where attraction becomes a mirror, and the other woman is less a target than a catalyst for profound inner change. This subtle emotional attraction is often a dance with shadows, not just his own, but hers as well. It awakens dormant feelings, stirs ancient wounds, and challenges the very foundations of identity and loyalty. In those fleeting moments of connection, there is an undeniable pull, a magnetic resonance that transcends mere physical presence. It is as if two souls briefly recognize each other across a vast emotional distance, whispering of what might be, what has been lost, or what remains hidden within the folds of the psyche. But this attraction also carries a profound tension between desire and duty, between freedom and restraint, between the yearning for novelty and the comfort of the known. And within this tension lies a sacred opportunity to confront the illusions we cling to unearth the truths we fear to face, and ultimately to reclaim the wholeness that only honesty and courage can bring. Because true transformation does not come from denial or escape. It arises when we embrace the complexity of our feelings, when we allow the heart's whispers to guide us toward deeper understanding and authentic connection. This dance of emotional attraction often unfolds in the silent spaces between words, in the glances held just a moment too long, in the slight shifts of posture when eyes meet, in the unspoken questions that linger beneath polite conversation. It is in these subtle exchanges that the soul speaks most clearly, revealing not what is said, but what is felt. A fragile vulnerability that trembles on the edge of exposure. And yet, for the married man caught in this web of feeling, there is a constant inner battle. The mind wrestles with loyalty and commitment, while the heart reaches out toward something new, something unknown. This tension is not a sign of weakness, but a signal from the unconscious, an invitation to explore the deeper layers of desire, identity, and fulfillment. It is here, in the quiet and often painful reckoning with one's own truth, that growth begins, when the shadows no longer threaten to overwhelm, but instead illuminate the path toward healing and integration. In the midst of this internal conflict, the married man may find himself increasingly aware of the subtle emotional threads that bind him to another woman. These are not grand gestures or overt declarations, but quiet moments of recognition, a shared smile that feels like a secret, a lingering glance that holds a world of meaning, a spontaneous laughter that cuts through the monotony of routine. Such moments awaken something deep within, a yearning for connection that goes beyond physical attraction, a desire to be truly seen, understood, and emotionally resonant. This yearning stirs the soul's ancient need for intimacy and belonging, reminding us all that beneath the roles we play, there is a core
When he
self-craving,
chooses to
authentic
confront these
connection.
feelings,
The journey inward begins. He must navigate the tangled landscape of his own desires, fears, and responsibilities. It is a delicate balance, honoring the commitments made while honoring the authentic emotions that arise. This process often reveals the shadow self, the hidden parts that yearn for acknowledgement. In Jungian terms, this is the moment of individuation, the integration of unconscious aspects into conscious awareness. It is not about acting on every impulse, but understanding what those impulses reveal about one's unmet needs and emotional wounds. Through this deeper self-awareness, the man may begin to recognize patterns within his marriage that have led to emotional disconnection. Perhaps communication has faltered, or intimacy has waned. These realizations are not accusations, but invitations. Invitations to grow, to heal, and to transform both himself and his relationship. True transformation arises not from avoidance, but from courageous engagement with the complexities of the heart. It is in this space of honest reflection that healing can emerge, and with it, a renewed capacity for love that is grounded in authenticity and mutual respect. As he journeys further, he may begin to discern the difference between fleeting attraction and deep emotional resonance. Attraction is often surface level, tied to novelty and desire, but emotional resonance taps into something far more profound. The recognition of a kindred spirit, the echo of his own inner world reflected in another. This resonance awakens the anima within him, the feminine aspect of his psyche that seeks connection, compassion, and creativity. Jung taught that integrating the anima is essential for a man's psychological wholeness. When neglected, the anima can manifest through projections onto others, leading to confusion and unbalanced relationships. By embracing the anima consciously, he learns to relate to women, including his wife, not as objects of desire or escape, but as whole human beings, mirrors of his own soul's journey. This shift opens pathways for deeper intimacy and mutual understanding, where love becomes a sacred dialogue rather than a battlefield of unmet needs. This awakening invites him to transform old wounds of abandonment, rejection, or unworthiness into sources of empathy and strength. It is through this alchemy that authentic connection is born. With this newfound awareness, he begins to notice how his emotional energy shifts when he interacts with his wife. No longer caught in patterns of frustration or longing for what's missing, he starts to see her presence as a reflection of his own growth. The tension softens, replaced by curiosity and genuine interest. He learns to listen, not just to her words, but to the emotions beneath them. In this listening, he finds that many of the barriers between them are built from misunderstandings and unspoken fears. By addressing these gently without judgment or blame, he creates space for vulnerability and healing. This process requires courage because it asks him to confront his own shadows, the parts of himself he might have hidden away or denied. But in this confrontation lies liberation. When he embraces his imperfections and fears, he can finally show up as his whole self, inviting her to do the same. Through this shared vulnerability, a new kind of bond emerges, one grounded not in idealization or fantasy, but in the messy, beautiful reality of two souls walking their paths together. This transformation isn't sudden or easy. It's a slow unfolding, like a flower opening petal by petal. Sometimes old wounds resurface, old doubts creep in, but each time he faces them with awareness, the hold they have on him lessens. He starts to understand that love is not about fixing or changing the other, but about embracing the fullness of what is, both light and shadow. In accepting himself and his wife fully, he taps into a deeper connection that transcends surface-level attraction or fleeting desire. This deeper love invites patience, compassion, and a willingness to grow, not only as individuals, but as a unified whole. It's a sacred dance where both partners learn to mirror each other's true selves, beyond masks and roles. And in this dance, he discovers a profound peace, a quiet joy that no external circumstance can take away. It is the peace that comes from knowing he is seen, known, and accepted, first by himself, and then by the one he loves. This peace, however, is not a passive state. It is alive, vibrant, and demands courage. To love deeply means to risk vulnerability, exposing the parts of himself he once feared would be rejected or misunderstood. Yet it is precisely through this vulnerability that authentic intimacy blooms. He learns that true strength lies not in control or dominance, but in surrender, surrendering to the moment, to his emotions, and to the mystery of connection. This surrender doesn't weaken chains of fear and insecurity. With each step, he becomes more attuned to his inner landscape, recognizing when old patterns try to pull him back into judgment or resentment. Instead, he chooses empathy and curiosity, allowing space for healing and transformation within himself and their relationship. In this unfolding journey, he also begins to understand the delicate dance of balance between holding on and letting go, between expressing his needs and honoring hers. Love is not a battleground for power, but a sacred space where both can thrive as whole, evolving individuals. He sees that his own shadows, those fears, doubts, and unresolved wounds, no longer dictate his reactions. Instead, they become guides, illuminating areas where growth is needed, inviting him to face himself with honesty and compassion. This inner work ripples outward, transforming how he shows up in every facet of life, as a partner, a friend, and a man committed to living with integrity. The journey toward authentic love becomes inseparable from the journey toward authentic selfhood. As he deepens this inner exploration, he discovers that true connection transcends words or gestures. It lives in presence. To be fully present with another means to listen beyond the surface, to sense the unspoken currents flowing beneath. In this presence, vulnerability no longer feels like weakness, but rather the ultimate courage. He learns to hold space not only for his own vulnerabilities, but for hers, allowing each to reveal their authentic selves without fear of judgment. This sacred exchange of vulnerability creates a fertile ground where trust takes root and blossoms. It invites an alchemy of healing, past wounds softened, old patterns released, and a new way of relating born out of mutual respect and deep empathy. With each moment of genuine presence, he becomes aware of the subtle dance between his inner masculine and feminine energies. This balance is delicate yet profound, where strength meets softness, action meets receptivity, and logic meets intuition. He recognizes that honoring this inner harmony is essential for authentic relationships. It is through embracing his full self, both light and shadow, that he can engage with others without neediness or defense, but with openness and groundedness. In this space, emotional resonance deepens, and love flows not as possession, but as freedom. He learns that love is not about filling a void, but about celebrating wholeness, both in himself and in her. This journey inward reveals how often the wounds of the past color present connections. Old fears, unresolved pain, and shadow aspects arise, not as enemies, but as messengers. Each one calls for attention, compassion, and integration. He sees how projection can cloud perception, making him mistake his own unmet needs or insecurities for something in her. Recognizing this projection is a turning point, where blame dissolves and understanding takes root. In that clarity, he can meet her not as an ideal or a challenge, but as a fellow traveler on a path of growth and healing. This shared vulnerability becomes the fertile ground for a love that is resilient, authentic, and transformative. As he embraces this deeper awareness, he also begins to witness his own patterns of emotional reactivity. The moments when his heart tightens, his defenses rise, or his mind spins stories to protect him from perceived hurt. In these spaces, he learns the power of pausing, the sacred pause that allows the storm within to settle. Through this pause, he cultivates the capacity to respond with presence rather than react from old wounds. This conscious space becomes a place of choice where love is not just felt, but actively practiced. It is here, in the stillness between impulse and action, that true emotional freedom is born. In this unfolding journey, he begins to see his relationships with new eyes, no longer as mere mirrors of his pain or desire, but as sacred encounters, each one a doorway to deeper understanding and growth. He notices the subtle dance between vulnerability and strength, realizing that to be truly seen requires the courage to show up exactly as he is, without masks or pretenses. Love, then, transforms from a fleeting feeling into a living presence, an ever-flowing river that nourishes his soul and invites him to lean into the mystery of connection without fear. As he walks this path, the shadows within start to soften, not erased, but embraced. The parts of himself he once feared or rejected become allies, guiding him toward wholeness. He learns that healing is not about fixing, but about befriending his own darkness with compassion and patience. In this sacred space, he feels the stirring of something profound, a quiet strength that arises from acceptance, a deep knowing that he is enough, just as he is. This newfound peace radiates outward, coloring his relationships with authenticity. With every step and deeper into his inner world, the man begins to see his relationships in a new light. No longer are they battlegrounds for fear and misunderstanding, but mirrors reflecting his own growth. He recognizes where he has projected his wounds onto others, and he gently takes back those fragments of himself. This reclamation allows him to engage with others, not from a place of scarcity or defense, but from a space of genuine connection and presence. In this way, the dance of love becomes an unfolding journey of mutual discovery, where both partners are invited to meet each other's true selves. As he continues on this path of self-awareness, the man embraces the paradox of vulnerability and strength. He understands that true courage is not in armor or control, but in the willingness to show his authentic self, imperfect and evolving. This openness invites others to respond with empathy and honesty, fostering relationships rooted in trust rather than illusion. He learns to listen, not just with his ears but with his heart, receiving others' truths without judgment or defense. In doing so, he dissolves old patterns of separation, and the sacred dance of union begins to unfold naturally. In this unfolding awareness, he begins to see the shadows within himself, the parts he once denied or feared. These shadows, once sources of shame or anger, become teachers. Each confrontation with his darker aspects is an invitation to integrate and heal, to bring light where there was previously resistance. This process is not quick or easy. It requires patience, compassion, and a steady commitment to growth. But with every step, he moves closer to wholeness, to a self that is no longer fragmented by fear or desire, but balanced in its many facets. He no longer chases perfection, nor does he hide from his flaws. Instead, he learns to hold both his strength and his vulnerability in the same breath. In moments of silence, he listens, not to the noise of the world, but to the soft whisper within. The anima, once projected outward onto women, is now recognized as a sacred presence within his soul. His intuition, his capacity for empathy, his emotional truth. He feels her not as a fantasy to be fulfilled by another, but as a living aspect of his psyche. She no longer seduces him through illusion, she guides him toward authenticity. In accepting her, he accepts himself. And slowly something begins to shift, not outside of him, but within. He no longer fears emotional intimacy, because he is no longer a stranger to his own depths. He no longer views love as possession or connection as control. He begins to see relationship as reflection, and every woman not as a rescuer or a threat, but as a mirror of what he has embraced and what he has yet to meet within himself. His gaze softens, his heart opens, not in desperation, but in sacred strength. The anima becomes his inner compass, guiding him not toward fantasy, but toward truth. In her presence within, he finds balance, and in that balance, he finds peace. He begins to walk through the world differently now, not with armor, but with awareness, not seeking to conquer love, but to commune with it. Women sense the change, not because he speaks differently, but because he listens with presence, with reverence. He no longer clings, nor does he withdraw. He meets them, not as an incomplete man searching for wholeness through another, but as one who has ventured inward and made peace with his sacred feminine. The animus within her responds. She no longer needs to protect herself from him. She no longer fears being unseen or consumed. In his stillness, she finds safety. In his depth, she finds recognition. The dance becomes mutual, not a chase, not a performance, but a surrender, a holy remembering of what it means to be human, together. In this sacred space between them, where masks fall and projections dissolve, something ancient stirs, something both primal and divine. It is not merely attraction, it is resonance. She recognizes in him the man who has journeyed through shadow and returned not as a savior, but as a witness. And he sees in her not just beauty, but the reflection of his own soul, once cast out, now welcomed home in her gaze. Together, they are no longer actors in a script written by fear, but co-authors of a new myth, one rooted in truth. Their union is not built on fantasy, but on the raw, unfiltered honesty of two beings who have touched the edge of themselves and returned bearing the gift of presence. In that presence, love is no longer something to chase, it is something to become. When the anima and animus unite within, the soul softens its armor. The war between need and fear quiets. Love no longer arrives with the chaos of possession, but with the calm of understanding. The man no longer needs to conquer the woman to feel powerful, and the woman no longer needs to please the man to feel worthy.